In today's episode, I'll be giving my review and reaction to the 2021 film The Guilty. So let's dive right into The Guilty.
Do something, man. People are questioning you. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, yep, do that. Sure, guys. Stupid and dumb. Just an idiot. Get your shit together, son. Fuck it. I loved it. Welcome to the dub cast.
The Guilty was released on September 11th, 2021. The genre is a crime thriller. The runtime is exactly an hour and 30 minutes. The budget had to do a little bit of research, so they paid $30 million to purchase the rights for this movie. I believe there was an international version of this movie that came out before, and $9 million just to make the movie, so $39 million overall during COVID. So this is all according to Reddit, not sure what's actually true and what's exact or not, so we'll see. I guess we won't see because I doubt I'll ever talk about this movie again, but anyways. The director is Antoine Fuqua, who directed Training Day, which is one of my favorite films so far reviewed on the Dubcast. Amazing film. Go check out that review and Training Day if you haven't seen either of them. This movie stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Christina Vidal Mitchell, Ethan Hawke, Riley Keough, Eli Goree, Divine Joy Randolph, Paul Dano, and Peter Sarsgaard. So, if you're new to the channel, what we do, I'll give my overall review of the movie, including spoilers and all that, give my score, compare that score amongst other movies I've reviewed so far on the Dubcast, and then after that, I'll get into my thoughts and reactions throughout the movie as things happen. So, starting with my overall review, this movie got intense as fuck real fast. I can definitely see how this movie is classified as a thriller. It was quite the ride. It's kind of a slow start, just like every movie would be, kind of getting ourselves into what we're going to see and learning a little about the characters, but wow, the last half of this movie is just a crazy ride. So we never leave the one setting with Jake Gyllenhaal's character in the emergency response call center. And I think there's pros and cons to that. I think the pros of staying in that one spot is that it's just basically a one running long shot of it all, and you can kind of understand every aspect of what Jake Gyllenhaal's character is going through, see how each thing affects him at each stage of this call and this intense call and kind of rescue mission that he puts himself on. I think the cons of that, it makes for kind of a boring set building. We're only really in this, it's a nice building. It's a call center, modern day call center. They have crazy monitors and all that. And not a lot of variety throughout the film. So it's really a lot of Jake Gyllenhaal's reactions and acting that we see in that same call center. But I think he did a really good job at that part of it. So that made it, that made all the feelings and emotions pretty intense as well. So I did like the ending. I think at least with the twist of it being Emily who had harmed the baby during the movie, and we were led to believe that happening the whole time wasn't true. So I like that aspect of the ending. It was kind of expected by the time it happened. I kind of caught on to it only a couple seconds before it actually did happen, though. So that was a decent twist, I thought. I wasn't really thinking about that, and then it kind of clicked in my head. I think it clicked with Jake Gyllenhaal's character as well, so that was kind of nice to have that play out at the same time. I think this is a good look into the job of a 911 call center operator slash dispatcher. I think this is something you wouldn't really think about before watching this movie, but when you do watch, you kind of understand a little bit more about what that person goes through, what they have to do on a day-to-day basis. So I did like seeing those aspects of that job. I think the emotions in this movie are raw as well, with this just being all over the place with emotions, kind of a roller coaster, deservedly so, due to the stakes and what happens across the movie. I liked how all of his coworkers and former coworkers also realize that he's going slowly psycho throughout the movie. Psycho might be the wrong word, but kind of losing his shit across the movie. I think the slow reveal of him also being guilty of being a killer himself as well was a good choice, because it allowed us to see him trying to be good before we know the bad that he's done. So we see him in this kind of hero role, but then at the end of the movie, the blindfold's kind of taken off our eyes, and we realize he's a killer at his core too. So I think that was it makes you feel a complex way about Jake Gyllenhaal's character. With the runtime as well, I thought this was a pretty easy watch. Nothing felt overdrawn or overdone. I thought Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in this movie was stellar, which I've come to expect from Jake across all of his movies. I think this is the 5th movie we reviewed of Jake Gyllenhaal, and I've liked all of them so far. So I'm giving this movie a solid 7.7. I think this is a pretty solid film. Definitely recommend to fans of Jake Gyllenhaal. I know a lot of people post 20, like 15, say no movies is good or good, but this was a solid movie. Jake Gyllenhaal did a good job. And I think fans of thrillers also give this a shot as well. So, with a 7.7 on the board, let's compare this amongst the other movies we reviewed so far on the Dubcast. So, The Guilty comes in at number 23 of 36. So, this is our 36th movie ranked so far. So, this has the same score as Extraction 2. I think I would have this movie slightly higher than Extraction 2 if I had to extrapolate between those two movies. They're both in the same 7.7, but if I just had to pick one, I would pick The Guilty. This ranks lower than other Jake Gyllenhaal films. Brothers, we gave an 8.4, Nightcrawler got an 8.3, and Brokeback Mountain got an 8.2, but all within that 7.7 to 8.4 range. So Jake Gyllenhaal, like I just mentioned, has some really good movies. That's our fifth one on the board. So this ranks similarly to the other crime film, All the Little Things, which is 7.6, and Wind River and Training Day. Those are my two of my favorite movies reviewed so far in the Dubcast. So this lacks a little bit behind that, but kind of same kind of crime stories through those movies. But yeah, so enough with the Dubcast graphic. Now let's break down into my thoughts and reactions throughout the movie. So starting this movie out, we had the Bible verse at the beginning, "The truth shall set you free," which I'm always glad that I write these things down because I would not have remembered this, but I think on a rewatch that'd be interesting to think about that when you're watching the movie. But obviously now having watched the movie, looking back on the truth shall set you free, I think that's kind of the story that Baylor learns throughout the movie, is that in order to set himself free, he's got to tell the truth and just be honest about it, and he does end up doing that at the end of the movie. So obviously that's kind of one of the overarching themes of the movie. And the whole thing with Emily, like, she wasn't really able to tell her or she was telling her truth, but it was just in a distorted way, which kind of made the whole story go, if you know what I mean. But we'll get into that. So we learned a little bit about Baylor. He's a 911 call operator. He has asthma. He that takes a lot of asthma inhaler puffs in the bathroom early on. So he gets in trouble for answering another call from somebody else during his job. This was the original call from the LA Times calling him about something that he was involved in, but we don't really learn a lot about that until a lot later. So that clue is already out there, but yeah, this would not be a great place for anyone to work at because if you can't answer your phone, I think if you're in a place where you can't answer your phone at work, like why would you even bring your phone? Like either just turn it upside down so you don't see it, turn the ringer off or something, step outside. But it's clear that Baylor is kind of put in this position where he's not really happy to be here, and he obviously doesn't have a lot of experience doing it either because he keeps getting yelled at by his superior. Um, yeah, I think I would take a step outside. Like he goes in like 17 breaks and just chills outside, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. So maybe go outside and answer that call next time. But he then calls his wife and lover. I believe he does take a step outside to do this, but he's not supposed to call her. We don't really know the context. That's kind of something else that at the beginning we get a lot of these context clues about Baylor's life and what's going on at the time, but it's never really expounded upon until later in the movie. So I was like, he's not supposed to call his wife slash lover. Like, I don't know if they're married or if they're dating or whatever, but he wants to say goodnight to his daughter, and he's ultimately denied this opportunity. So yeah, there's obviously some stuff going on here. Like, basic thought line here was, oh, they're just getting divorced or they're breaking up or they're in a bad breakup, you know. But yeah, clearly we learned later on why that was the case. But this is just a bad start for Baylor, getting yelled at by his boss. Then he is not supposed to call his wife and lover, you know. Anyways, back to the seat. Mind you, this is all like super late in the night, of course. As a 911 operator, that's probably the most important time. So he receives a call at his desk from a woman who was abducted, and while he's taking this call from the woman who's been abducted, he gets the call back from his wife slash lover. It's the kid trying to wish him a good night. I thought he might just hang up the phone on the person who is being abducted, but he doesn't. He's now in taking this person's notes and figuring out what they need and how to help them possibly help this person who's abducted on the highway. He calls back the house and gets in contact with the daughter of the person being abducted. So he kind of does a lot of extra work, actually. He does a lot of extra work to find the details about this case and what's going on with it. I don't know if this is out of the ordinary or if 911 operators do this, if they're supposed to do this. I feel like you're definitely not supposed to do this. But he calls back the house, gets in contact with the daughter. It's a very small child daughter. I believe she's like 5 or something. So the man who abducted the woman is the father of the daughter, and he has a knife. So originally, right away, we're like, whoa, this is like a crazy, we got to find this person and help this woman get out of this precarious situation. So he goes into, Baylor goes into a separate room and he calls his sergeant, I believe this is Ethan Hawke, and makes him order for him to send a unit to the girl's house to make sure that the kids are doing okay, if they were to come back, if anything were to happen. And, we slowly learned that Baylor was a former police officer, so he has all these sort of connections, and now he's like having Ethan Hawke do this work for him, but we get more subtle clues about Baylor's possible past. Anyways, so he's been separate. We learned more about him, Baylor. He's been separated from his wife for 6 months now. He's still wearing the ring though. Yeah, he is just down bad on this call with his wife. It's going on for way too long. He's kind of just pulling at straws. It was kind of a very awkward conversation. He's what the kids like to call down bad. And after he hangs up with his wife, he just has an angry phone call with the next 911 dispatcher, or next 911 call coming into his desk, and just says, fuck you. So yeah, this is like bad work by Baylor, just letting the emotions get onto you. And yeah, you shouldn't answer phone calls at work and be simping at work because you're going to be down bad and it's going to affect your work, especially when your work's talking to people on the phones all day. Nonetheless, so now he is still very wrapped up in this abduction case. He figures out who the husband is. He calls him on his personal phone and threatens him after closing the blinds. So he goes into this private room, closes the blinds, calls the guy and threatens him and is like, yo, like, you gotta return this girl, like, this is not cool at all, I'm gonna come get you, like, threatens him. I mean, once again, this is definitely not allowed, but Baylor does what he wants, and he's really, I mean, it's kind of like, it's a moral question, because if you're at work and, you need to do something in order to, especially something as important as saving someone from being abducted, would you take your step out and do it, or would you do it by the book? I think he does the right thing by ultimately trying to do the best, but in those situations, he just gets very heated, threatening people and being over aggressive. I think that's his fault, and I think that's what cost him his job. And the original problem is even here because of the court case he's going to have, or the court case he's going to have play out. But yeah, a little over aggressive, but I think he is doing the right thing, trying to make sure that this woman is returned safely. So essentially, the police show up to the family house like he asked for, and the daughter has blood on her hands and shirt. Holy shit, the baby is dead. I was like, whoa, a baby is dead. So from our perspective, a woman is being abducted with a man. Back home, there's a small daughter with blood on her hands and shirt, and a baby is dead at the house with all this happening. Like, what the fuck, man? This is like a crazy crime, right? So we're led to believe this guy's a psycho who's done all this. So he calls with Emily again. He's kind of running out of options. He's already made his calls to the husband in the case. He's already made the calls home. The daughter's safe. Everything's going to be okay. The police are with him. So they're kind of losing track of trying to track down this vehicle. So he calls back Emily and makes her pull the handbrake super hard, which seemingly crashes the vehicle. She thinks she's going to die. He calls his old sergeant again, and he's pissed that Joe is still working. Is it Joe Baylor? Maybe that's his name. Sorry, everyone just been saying Baylor this whole time. But yeah, by the way, he was supposed to clock out like 3 hours ago, but he's staying extra. I mean, as I said before, I think it's the right thing to ultimately do. I don't know if you'd be able to go off work and let this just evade you. Like, it must take a really thick, I don't want to say thick skull because that might be offensive. Like, it would take a lot for me to just be a 911 call operator, and then something's out there that I'm worried about and just like go home and leave. Like, I think that's a really interesting job, actually, to think about that kind of moral whatever. But anyways, he's still working. His old sergeant's pissed that he's still working. So he wants now that Emily's crashed the car, he wants Emily to hit the guy that she's with in the head with a brick. Um, yeah, so they've been on the phone for a long time. He's just trying to save her. I mean, at this point, like, if you have a brick, might as well defend yourself, do something about it, right? So Emily's kind of freaking out, having just crashed the car. She doesn't know where her husband is. You know, she's free, but she's on the side of the highway somewhere. She's kind of freaking out. He calms her down a little bit, and then she says, "I like you, Joe," and he's like, "I like you too." I thought this was a little bit of weird, like romantic vibes going on here, just from like a phone call, but it is what it is. Maybe I'm just over analyzing that. So here's where we learn Emily is a psycho. I thought in my head 2 seconds before she said it, but she took snakes out of the baby's stomach, which was the kid, Oliver, and she was at a psychiatric hospital, we learned, so she was seeing these snakes in his stomach affecting him and taking him out. That's why he's all bloody. She did it. So it wasn't actually the guy that we thought, and it was Emily this whole time. So that was the good twist that I really liked. I thought that was a good flip at probably three-fourths of the way through the movie. So now Joe doesn't know what to do. His whole role has been flipped. He calls Henry. No one has helped Emily, he says, like none of the hospitals and stuff. And yeah, I mean, especially in 2020, like post COVID, this makes a lot of sense thematically. Like the mental institutions are horrible. No one has helped Emily. And so he believes she killed Oliver, the baby. He was just trying to bring her back to the mental hospital. Um, he loses connection with Henry on the phone, smashes a lamp, once again being a little over aggressive and very reactionary. So Emily calls back. She finds blood in herself and questions Joe about whose it is. So she realizes that the blood on herself is Oliver and that she did this to Oliver, and now she's going to commit suicide. So really, just like shit hits the fan, and just whoa, this last couple minutes is just crazy. So while all that's happening, we learn a little bit more about Joe's past. So he killed a 19-year-old boy because he could and he was angry. That's the reason he justifies it for. And yeah, I think I mean, even in the last scene or two, we see Joe being very over aggressive, threatening, kind of, I keep saying reactionary, but he just is like, doesn't think before he does something. So he killed a 19-year-old boy. That's fucked up. Um, yeah, and he admits openly that he was angry and because he could. So it's good on him for it's good on him for saying it out loud. But now we're just in this movie with these two psychos going back and forth, basically. So Emily hangs up and says she's going to be with Oliver now. She's going to commit suicide. But the officers, luckily, Joe had sent a lot of people out there. Some people found him. She comes down from the overpass and is with officers, does not commit suicide. The big storyline through here is that broken people save broken people. So I think this is honestly a good quote because you have Joe who's very torn up and broken about his own personal dilemma, and we don't really know much about that until later on in the movie, until he admits it to Emily. But him having this kind of broken sense of self was why he was maybe overprotective and over um, giving a lot of effort in trying to save Emily. So I think this worked out in a good way because, I mean, theoretically, if Emily was actually an abductee and he went all this way to save her, like that was him channeling his energy about his own shame and what he had done to try and protect other people. But, you know, it just turned out that she was a psycho the whole time. But still, I think it was worth it. You know, they tracked him, nobody gets hurt. Um, Oliver is still alive and in the ICU, so the baby still has a chance of living. I'm guessing it will live. So after all this is done, Joe pukes after the encounter, looks at the watch. It's 6:11. Yeah, I think he's supposed to get off at like midnight or 2. He just stayed way too long. I'd be like, bro, go home, refresh, take a shower. You're not coming into work tomorrow. Like, that was a crazy case. But none of his coworkers even know because he's off in the private room doing all this. So I don't know. Maybe he's going to just clock back in tomorrow. Well, he's not because we learn what happened. So basically, all that whole storyline is tied up with Oliver, Emily, and Henry. Everything's all good with the family. Joe kind of figured that out. I mean, was he kind of reckless in his actions? Yes, but ultimately, it's a good conclusion in that side of the story. Having seen all this, he now is talking to Rick. He's bawling his eyes out. He wants Rick to tell him the truth about what actually happened. He was going to have Rick lie for him at court. And Joe himself calls the person from the LA Times and tells the truth. He pleads guilty to the crime of manslaughter, assumingly in the case with the 19-year-old boy that he killed. So that was it. I think there's a lot of thematic messages to be unwrapped there. I think I got to some of them, but I think there's more that I'm missing. So if anything else popped out to you, please feel free to leave them below in the comments. I always read all the comments. So what did you guys think of The Guilty? I thought it was a pretty solid watch for an hour and a half. Like, it was kept me on the edge of my seat. It was enjoyable. I'm really liking Jake Gyllenhaal's movies. I think he's one of my favorite actors just because every time I see him in a movie, it's a good movie. So once again, let me know what you thought of this movie. Am I too high? Am I too low? Stay tuned for more content on the way. Movie reviews coming. We got Isle of Dogs and we got American Gangster coming. Always doing more movie reviews as time goes on. We're taking a little bit of a break from shows right now, wrapping up the football season. So we have Survivor wrapped up, and I don't know what my next show will be, but we did Outer Banks, Tier List, Season 4 review, Survivor, finale, and that. So expect more TV content when I decide to watch more TV, but I'm always watching more movies, so doing sports stuff as well. So it's a good time here in the Dubcast. Stay tuned, subscribe, like, comment, dislike, whatever you like to do. So as always, be easy.